Have you ever wondered, even at 45, 55, or 60, a man's heart remains a delicate thing. They'll never admit it, they'll joke, they'll shrug, they'll laugh it off, like it's nothing. But deep down, behind every confident smile, behind every tired pair of eyes is a part of them that still hopes, still aches, still dreams of being loved purely and completely. I've sat across from powerful men who built companies, survived wars, raised families, lost fortunes. And when I asked them quietly, when the world wasn't listening, what made your heart choose her? What made you never forget? Their answers were never about beauty or success or grand gestures. It was the small things, the forgotten little moments, the way she smiled when he wasn't looking, the way she listened as if his voice was the only sound in the world. Tonight, I want to tell you a story not just about men, but about you, about the woman who doesn't need to be 25 again, about the woman who already holds the keys. She just forgot where she left them. Her name is Helen, 52 years old, divorced after 22 years of marriage, alone, scared, but not broken. Learning, one day at a time, that love doesn't have an expiration date. Tonight is Helen's night. She stands in front of her mirror. The silver threads in her hair glint under the warm light. The tiny lines around her eyes tell stories the young could never understand. She breathes in, she smiles, and she chooses to believe. Maybe, just maybe, her best days are not behind her. Maybe they're still waiting. A few weeks later, Helen meets Mark, an old friend from years ago. They agree to meet at a small, cozy cafe tucked away from the noise of the world. She almost cancels. The doubt creeps in. Who wants to listen to me now? What do I even have to offer? But she shows up anyway. Mark arrives, a little older, a little heavier, carrying his own invisible battles. They sit, they laugh, and then, quietly, he begins to talk about his life, his regrets, his fears he's never dared to say out loud. Helen doesn't rush him. She doesn't interrupt with clever advice. She doesn't fix or scold or try to be impressive. She just listens, truly listens, with her whole heart open. No judgment, no hurry. In that small, trembling moment, Mark's walls he spent years building, start to crumble. He feels seen, he feels safe, he feels home. And Helen, she doesn't even realize the power she holds right there in her silence. Because the truth is, every man is secretly searching for one thing. A woman who makes him feel that he doesn't have to be strong all the time, that he doesn't have to be perfect, that he can lay down the armor just for a little while. That night, Mark doesn't fall in love with Helen's appearance. He falls in love with her heart. He falls in love with how she made him feel about himself. And Helen, without trying, without pretending, had melted a man's heart. Simply by being present. One conversation, one evening, one soft look. That's all it takes. And you already have that magic inside you too. This is just the beginning. There are 6 more secrets that Helen will discover. 6 more ways a woman can melt a man's heart without even knowing she's doing it. Are you ready to find out what they are? Stay with me, because Helen's journey is only just beginning, and so is yours. The next time Helen met Mark, it wasn't planned. She was rushing through the grocery store, hair pinned up messily, no makeup, wearing an old sweater that once belonged to her son. Far from glamorous, far from perfect. Yet somehow, in that moment, Mark saw her, really saw her. Not the polished woman from the cafe, not the careful, composed version of her, but the real Helen. And she didn't hide. She smiled, a little embarrassed, shrugged, holding up a bag of frozen peas like it was a white flag. And Mark smiled back, not politely, but warmly, genuinely. Later, as they walked together through the parking lot, something shifted. Helen stumbled slightly, her shoe catching a crack in the pavement. She laughed, a real unfiltered belly laugh that echoed in the cool afternoon air, and Mark reached out instinctively, steadying her by the elbow. It was nothing. It was everything. Because in that tiny, clumsy moment, Helen had shown something most women spend a lifetime trying to hide: vulnerability. Not weakness, not helplessness, but something far rarer: the willingness to let someone see her imperfections. And when a woman does that, when she stops trying to be untouchable, invincible, flawless, it does something to a man's heart. It calls out the protector in him. It awakens the part of him that wants to care, to nurture, to stand beside her. Helen didn't plan any of this. She wasn't performing softness. She simply allowed herself to be human. And in doing so, she became magnetic. You see, men aren't drawn to women who never need anything. They're drawn to women who trust them enough to show when they do. A man's heart melts not because a woman is perfect, but because she is brave enough to let him in. They stood there for a long second, Helen's hand lightly resting on his arm. Neither spoke, neither needed to. Something silent passed between them, something deeper than flirtation, something older than words. It was trust, it was connection, and it was real. Helen's heart raced as she drove home, not because she had planned it, not because she had said all the right things, but because she had let herself be seen and he had chosen to stay. That night, she sat by her bedroom window watching the stars emerge one by one, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt alive. She realized something powerful. True attraction isn't about impressing someone. It's about inviting them into your world. Flaws, cracks, laughter, stumbles, all of it. When you allow someone to see your real moments, you offer them something so much more precious than perfection. You offer them intimacy, and intimacy is where love begins. As Helen drifted to sleep, the gentle glow of hope warmed her chest. She didn't know it yet, but she had just unlocked the second secret to melting a man's heart. A secret more powerful than any charm or beauty tip ever could be. And as she slept, the story of her new beginning, the love she thought she had lost forever, was already taking root. But the journey wasn't over. There were still 5 more lessons waiting for her, 5 more invisible threads pulling her towards something deeper, something true. Would she be brave enough to follow them? Would you? The next step would require even more courage. It would require her to offer not just her laughter or her listening ear, but something even more vulnerable, her genuine admiration. Not because she had to, but because she would want to. The kind of admiration that can lift a man higher than he's ever dared to dream. The kind of admiration that could change everything. But that's a story for tomorrow night. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. The next time Helen saw Mark, it was different. There was a lightness between them now, a familiarity, like old rivers carving deeper paths through stone. They met for lunch at a little outdoor cafe tucked between ivy-covered walls. It was a crisp day, the kind that smells like autumn and possibility. Mark talked about his work, about the small wins no one else seemed to notice, about the battles no one applauded. Helen listened, smiling softly. And then, without overthinking, without calculation, she said something that would change everything. "You know," she murmured, stirring her tea, "I've always admired how you keep pushing forward, even when it's hard, even when no one says thank you." Mark froze, just for a second, as if he couldn't quite believe she had seen it, as if the air itself had shifted around them. Because here's a truth most women forget. Men, even the strongest, even the proudest, are starving for admiration. Not flattery, not empty praise, but real, genuine admiration for the battles they fight silently, the pressure they carry invisibly. Helen wasn't trying to flatter him. She wasn't handing out compliments like candy. She simply spoke the truth of what she saw, and it mattered more than she could ever know. You see, a man can climb mountains, he can build empires, he can win wars, but if the woman he cares about doesn't see him, really see him, the victories start to feel hollow. Helen didn't diminish herself to make him feel big. She didn't pretend she was small. She simply stood in her own quiet power and chose to recognize his. That choice, that gift, is a force more potent than any spell. Because when a woman admires a man sincerely, without losing her own scent, it doesn't make her weaker. It makes the bond between them indestructible. Mark's eyes softened. For the first time in a long time, he felt like a man again. Not a paycheck, not a problem solver, but someone worth admiring simply for who he was. And Helen felt something shift inside her too. She realized she didn't have to compete. She didn't have to control. She didn't have to protect herself by staying distant or guarded. She could meet him heart to heart, soul to soul, and still remain fully herself. There was power in that. a quiet, feminine power she had forgotten she possessed. Lunch ended, but neither wanted to say goodbye, so they walked slowly down tree-lined streets, talking about everything and nothing. At one point, Mark stopped. He bent to tie his shoe, clumsy, unglamorous, and Helen caught herself smiling at him with a tenderness she hadn't felt in years. Not because he was impressive, but because he was real, and because she allowed herself to love the realness. That night, as Helen sat on her porch, wrapped in a soft sweater, watching the last of the golden sun sink behind the hills, she realized something that made her breath catch. The heart melts not from grand gestures, but from quiet recognitions, from a glance, a word, a whispered belief in someone's goodness. She could feel it, the delicate threads weaving between her and Mark, unseen but unbreakable. It wasn't about falling desperately in love, it was about building something deeper, something rarer, mutual respect, mutual admiration, a sacred space where both could rise higher simply because the other believed they could. And Helen, for the first time in decades, believed in herself too. She had thought love was about trying harder, looking younger, pretending more. But real love, the kind that melts a man's heart and binds him to you forever, was about authenticity, about seeing and being seen without fear. As the stars blinked awake overhead, Helen whispered to the cool evening air, "I'm still learning, but maybe I'm ready. Ready for more than survival. Ready for more than pretending. Ready for love, real and raw and breathtaking." And in the soft darkness, it almost felt like the universe whispered back, "Yes, you are." But there was still more for Helen to discover, because melting a man's heart isn't only about admiration. Sometimes it's about bringing something unexpected into his life. Joy, playfulness, the kind of light that men secretly long for but rarely dare to ask for. And that is where the next part of Helen's story would lead her. But not just yet. Tonight, let the seeds of admiration take root. Tomorrow, the adventure would bloom in ways she never imagined. And you'll be right there with her. Because this journey, this rediscovery of magic, belongs to you too. Helen hadn't planned to see Mark again so soon, but life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. A text, simple and casual. "Coffee tomorrow? You pick the place." She smiled before she even realized she was smiling. Fingers hovering over the screen, heart skipping like a girl half her age. "Sure," she typed back. One word, one doorway. The next morning, Helen chose a small diner she loved, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a jukebox that still worked if you kicked it just right. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't impressive, but it was real. Mark arrived with a sheepish grin, clutching 2 pastries in a brown paper bag. "I didn't know if you're a muffin or croissant kind of woman," he said. Helen laughed, really laughed, a sound so full and bright that even the waitress looked up and smiled. And in that moment, that tiny, ordinary moment, something magical happened. The air shifted. The weight that so often hangs over grown-ups, the seriousness, the tiredness, the aching sense that joy is something for the young, lifted. For a little while, they were just 2 people, not their failures, not their scars. Just Helen and Mark, sharing crumbs and bad coffee and laughter so pure it made their eyes water. And it hit Helen, hard and sweet all at once. This was what she had forgotten. The art of being light, the art of letting joy slip into the cracks where sorrow used to live. You see, as women grow wiser, stronger, tougher, sometimes they forget that lightness is not weakness, it's a gift. A woman who can laugh, genuinely, recklessly. A woman who can find delight in silly songs and messy sandwiches and terrible coffee jokes. That woman is unforgettable because she reminds a man of something he lost along the way, his own capacity for joy. Mark leaned across the table, brushing a crumb from Helen's cheek. A simple touch. But his hand lingered half a second longer than necessary. His eyes softened, warmed, because Helen wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't trying to seduce him. She was simply sharing herself, her laughter, her spark, her stubborn, glorious light, and it was irresistible. After breakfast, they wandered through a small farmer's market set up along the street. Helen tried on a ridiculous sun hat with floppy brims that covered half her face. Mark laughed so hard he nearly dropped his coffee. Helen spun in a circle, arms wide, fearless and free. And for a heartbeat, just a heartbeat, Mark saw not just the woman she was. He saw the girl she had once been, the girl who still lived inside her, unbroken, unashamed. The girl who had simply been waiting for someone safe enough, kind enough, joyful enough to coax her back into the sun. As the morning faded into afternoon, neither of them wanted to leave. Because that's the other secret no one talks about. Men don't stay because of beauty. They don't stay because of logic or lists or promises. They stay because of how they feel around you. And when a man feels lighter, freer, more himself in your presence, he'll come back. Again and again and again. Helen didn't wear the sun hat home, but she wore something better. A glow, a quiet, radiant happiness that lit her from the inside out. And that night, as she sat barefoot on her porch, a glass of wine in hand, she whispered to the stars, maybe I'm not too late. Not too late for laughter. Not too late for sweetness. Not too late for love that feels like breathing. She closed her eyes and let herself believe it, truly believe it, for the first time in years. And somewhere deep in the secret places of her heart, the woman she had been all along, the brave, tender, laughing woman, stirred awake. Helen didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't need to, because she was no longer chasing love. She was becoming the kind of woman love couldn't help but find. And Mark was already lost in the orbit of her light, whether he knew it yet or not. But there was still more, because melting a man's heart isn't only about joy or admiration or vulnerability. Sometimes it's about something quieter, something even deeper. A way of being that wraps around him like a soft, invisible thread, a sense of peace. And that is where Helen's journey would lead her next. But that's a story for another night, and I promise you won't want to miss it. Helen woke before dawn, not from noise, not from worry, but from something softer, a feeling she hadn't known in years, a feeling so rare, so precious, it almost scared her peace. She sat up in bed, wrapping her arms around her knees, and listened to the silence. No urgent emails, no buzzing phone, no ache of loneliness gnawing at the edges of her mind. Just stillness, just breath, just being. And she realized this was what she'd always been searching for. Not a man to fix her life, not a man to fill the empty spaces, but a man who could share the stillness without crowding it, without breaking it. That afternoon, she and Mark met again. No fancy plans, no grand expectations, just a walk by the lake, the path lined with trees whispering secrets only the old and wise can hear. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Sometimes he would point out a heron standing proud in the shallows. Sometimes she would nudge him playfully when he stumbled over a root. But mostly, they just moved together. Two souls breathing in rhythm. Two stories gently weaving themselves together without force. There's a kind of intimacy that words can't touch. The kind that grows in shared silences, in comfortable glances, in the simple, steady presence of someone who doesn't ask you to be more or less than you already are. Mark didn't try to impress her. Helen didn't try to entertain him. They simply walked. And in that quiet, something profound took root. Because here's the truth almost no one says aloud. A man might chase excitement. He might chase adventure, thrill, conquest. But he stays. He belongs where he finds peace. A woman who becomes a man's safe harbor, who makes him feel that coming home to her is the sweetest thing in the world, holds a kind of power no storm can ever tear away. Helen didn't realize it at the time, but every step they took side by side, every quiet moment they allowed to bloom between them, was stitching Mark's heart closer and closer to hers. Not through drama, not through fireworks, through gentleness, through trust, through the rare, rare gift of simply being enough. As the sun sank lower, painting the sky in melted golds and bruised purples, they found a bench overlooking the water. They sat, shoulders almost touching, the soft breeze wrapping them in its cool embrace. After a long silence, Mark spoke. His voice was low, unsteady. "I didn't realize how tired I was until today." Helen turned to him, her gaze steady. "You don't have to be anything here," she said quietly. "Just you." Mark closed his eyes for a moment, as if those words had reached some place inside him even he didn't know was aching. And when he opened them again, Helen saw something she hadn't seen before. Gratitude. the deep soul-level kind, not because she had dazzled him, not because she had fixed him, because she had seen him, all of him, and stayed. And in that moment, without fanfare, without speeches, without a single promise made, Mark fell a little more in love with Helen. Not the idea of her, not the fantasy of her, the real her. The woman who didn't need to shout to be heard, who didn't need to demand to be respected, who didn't need to fight to be chosen, because she had chosen herself first. That night, Helen stood by her bedroom window again, just as she had so many nights before. But tonight, she wasn't looking for something out there. She was looking inward, and she liked what she saw. She was no longer the woman waiting to be rescued, no longer the woman trying to prove her worth. She was a lighthouse, steady, unshakable, alive. And if Mark wanted to sail into her light and stay a while, he would be welcome. But either way, she would shine. Because melting a man's heart isn't about losing yourself. It's about becoming so fully, fiercely, peacefully yourself that he can't help but want to stand beside you. The lake shimmered under the rising moon, a new chapter waiting, a new life unfolding. Helen smiled, not with hope, not with fear, but with certainty. She was ready for the kind of love that feels like coming home, ready for the next step. Because there was one final piece Helen had yet to discover, one last secret that ties all the others together, a secret that can make a man's heart yours, not for a night, not for a season, but for a lifetime. And that final step, that's the part of the story where everything changes. Everything. But we'll step into that together very soon. The next morning, Helen woke up smiling. No particular reason, no grand event waiting, just a simple, steady happiness humming under her skin. For the first time in so long, she wasn't waiting for life to begin. She was already living it. She made coffee, the strong, messy kind she liked. She played an old song and danced barefoot across the kitchen floor, laughing, twisting, letting the sunlight kiss her face, not for anyone else, not for validation, not even for Mark, but for herself. And in that radiant, private moment, Helen unlocked the final, most powerful secret. When a woman lives her own joy, unapologetically, wholeheartedly, she becomes truly irresistible. Not because she is chasing love, but because she is love. Because joy, real joy, cannot be faked. It cannot be bottled. It cannot be performed. It rises up from the roots of who you are. It spills over and blesses everything you touch. When a woman carries that kind of light inside her, the world bends toward her. Not because she demands it, but because she inspires it. Helen spent that day doing little things she loved, browsing a bookstore, sending a silly postcard to an old friend, sitting in the park, watching the clouds shape-shift into castles and dragons. And when Mark texted later a simple, hopeful, "Hey, you free tonight?" she smiled. But she didn't drop everything to run to him. She finished her chapter, she finished her coffee, she finished her conversation with herself. Because the greatest gift she could offer him wasn't availability, it was wholeness. A life already full, a heart already full. Mark wasn't rescuing her, he was joining her. That evening when they met, Mark noticed it immediately. The way Helen moved, the way she laughed. Not for him, not for approval, but simply because she could. The way she lit up the space between them without even trying, and without even realizing it. Mark's heart melted, completely and irrevocably. Because the truth is, men don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with presence, with authenticity, with the wild, beautiful fire of a woman who belongs to herself first. Helen had become that woman. And so can you. You sitting there, listening to my voice right now. Maybe you've forgotten your own light. Maybe you've given so much for so long you forgot what your own laughter sounds like, but it's still there. It's still inside you, waiting. All it takes is one small yes to yourself. One small decision to choose joy, to choose life, to choose yourself. Not tomorrow, not someday, but today. You don't have to be younger, you don't have to be richer, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. Be messy, be magnificent, be wildly, gloriously alive, because when you are, love will find you. Not because you chase it, but because you become it. Thank you, truly, for being here with me on this journey. Thank you for listening, for feeling, for daring to believe that it's not too late. It never was. If this story touched you, if you saw even a little piece of yourself in Helen's journey, I invite you to take a moment, like this video, leave a comment, tell me which part resonated with your heart the most. Share this with another woman who needs to remember her own magic. And don't forget to subscribe, because this is just the beginning. There are so many more beautiful stories ahead. Stories about love, about healing, about living fully, fiercely, without apology. We're just getting started. You are just getting started. And I cannot wait to walk this next chapter with you. You are powerful. You are radiant. You are ready. And the best, the very best, is still yet to come.